The girl with the torn dress and sunburned face pressed herself against the wooden wall of the general store, trying to make herself invisible as the shopkeeper swept the boardwalk and muttered about vagrants ruining his business. Lila Kendrick had not eaten a proper meal in 4 days, and the gnawing emptiness in her stomach had become a constant companion, as familiar now as the weight of her own shame. She had arrived in Leavenworth, Kansas, 3 weeks earlier with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of desperate hope that had quickly withered under the harsh prairie sun. It was May of 1873, and the town bustled with soldiers from the nearby fort, traders heading west, and respectable families who looked right through her, as if she did not exist. Lila had tried to find work, knocking on every door, offering to clean, cook, mend, or do laundry. But decent folk did not hire homeless girls with no references and no family to vouch for their character. The fact that she was only 19 and alone made her even more suspect in their eyes. She watched as a woman in a fine blue dress guided her children past, pulling them closer as if poverty might be contagious. Lila turned her face away, blinking back the sting of tears she could not afford to shed. Crying would not fill her belly or put a roof over her head. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention to the street where a tall man on a roan gelding was tying his horse to the hitching post outside the saloon. He was dusty from travel, with dark hair that needed cutting and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. Even from a distance, she could see the worn quality of his clothes, the practical simplicity of a working man rather than the polished appearance of a gentleman. He moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, adjusting his hat before stepping onto the boardwalk. Then his eyes met hers across the street, and for a moment, neither of them looked away. His gaze was not like the others she had endured, not filled with judgment or disgust or that particular gleam that made her skin crawl. Instead, there was something thoughtful in his expression, perhaps even kind. The shopkeeper chose that moment to shoo her away with his broom, and Lila stumbled forward, catching herself before she fell into the dusty street. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she hurried away, but she could feel the cowboy's eyes still on her. Wade Coleman had seen a lot of hard things in his 26 years, but there was something about the girl being chased away from the storefront that struck him square in the chest. Maybe it was the way she held her head up despite the obvious shame, or the thinness of her frame that spoke of real hunger, not the fashionable delicacy some women aspired to. He had known hunger himself, back when his father drank away every cent, and he and his mother had scraped by on pride and determination. He had come to town for supplies and to sell some horses, but suddenly, those errands seemed less pressing. Wade crossed the street, his boots echoing on the wooden planks as he followed the direction the girl had gone. He found her sitting on a crate in the alley beside the smithy, her face turned toward the wall as if she could will herself to disappear entirely. "Miss," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. She jumped anyway, her green eyes wide and wary as she scrambled to her feet. Up close, he could see she had been pretty before hardship had carved hollows in her cheeks and painted dark circles under her eyes. No, he corrected himself, she was still pretty, just worn down like good leather left too long in the rain. "I do not want any trouble," she said quickly, her voice hoarse. "I was just resting. I will move along." "I am not here to run you off," Wade said, removing his hat in a gesture of respect his mother had drilled into him. "I saw what happened back there, and I thought maybe you could use a meal." Suspicion flickered across her face, and he could see her weighing the offer, trying to determine what price might come attached to such kindness. He had seen that look before, on the faces of wounded animals deciding whether to trust the hand extended toward them. "Just a meal," he said firmly, No strings, no expectations. You look hungry and I have got money for food. That is all there is to it. Why would you do that for a stranger? She asked, but even as she spoke, her hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. Because somebody did it for me once when I needed it, Wade said simply. And because it is the right thing to do. Lila studied him for a long moment, taking in the honest set of his shoulders, the directness of his gaze. She had learned to read men quickly in the past weeks, to sense danger before it got too close. This one did not set off any warnings, and God help her, she was so hungry she felt dizzy. Just a meal, she repeated, as if saying it aloud would make it true. Just a meal, he confirmed. They walked to the hotel restaurant, and Lila tried to ignore the stares that followed them, the whispers that started the moment they entered. The proprietor looked like he might refuse to seat them until Wade pulled out a handful of coins and set them on the counter with a decisive clink. "A table for two," Wade said, his voice brooking no argument. "And bring whatever the special is, along with coffee and bread." Lila sank into the chair he pulled out for her hands shaking slightly as she placed them in her lap. The smell of food from the kitchen was almost overwhelming, making her stomach clench painfully. When was the last time she had sat at a real table, been treated like a person worthy of consideration? "What is your name?" Wade asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Lila," she said softly. "Lila Kendrick." "Wade Coleman," he replied. "I have got a ranch about 15 miles north of here. Raise horses mostly, some cattle." The waitress brought coffee, and Lila wrapped her hands around the warm cup, breathing in the rich aroma before taking a careful sip. It was hot and strong and tasted like heaven. "How long have you been on your own?" Wade asked gently. Lila hesitated, but something about his quiet manner made her want to answer honestly. 3 weeks in Leavenworth. Before that, I was in St. Louis. My mother died last winter, and the landlord turned me out when I could not pay the rent. I used what little money I had to come west, thinking there would be more opportunities, but— She gestured vaguely at herself, at her shabby appearance. "No one wants to hire a girl with nothing." The food arrived. A generous serving of beef stew with potatoes and carrots, thick slices of fresh bread with butter, and apple pie for dessert. Lila tried to eat slowly, to maintain some semblance of dignity, but hunger won out and she found herself practically shoveling the stew into her mouth. It was delicious, the best thing she had ever tasted, and she had to fight back tears at the simple mercy of it. Wade ate his own meal quietly, not commenting on her appetite, not making her feel ashamed. When she finally pushed back her empty plate, feeling fuller than she had in weeks, he was watching her with that same thoughtful expression from earlier. "I have got a proposition for you," he said, "and I want you to hear me out before you answer." Lila's heart sank. Here it came, the price she had known must exist. Men did not buy meals for homeless girls out of pure charity. She set her jaw, preparing to refuse whatever degrading offer he was about to make. "I need a housekeeper," Wade said. "My mother passed 2 years ago, and I have been batching it ever since, doing a poor job of keeping the place clean and cooking meals that are barely fit to eat. I have got 3 ranch hands who bunk in the barn, and they could use proper feeding too. The work would be hard, I will not lie about that, but you would have your own room, 3 meals a day and wages. $20 a month to start, more if things work out well." Lila stared at him, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "You want to hire me as your housekeeper?" "That is right," Wade confirmed. "I know you have got no references, and I am taking you at your word that you are honest and hardworking, but my gut says you are. I am generally a pretty good judge of character." "Why?" she whispered. "You do not know anything about me." "I know you are down on your luck through no fault of your own," Wade said. "I know you have got pride, even when you have got nothing else. And I know what it is like to need a hand up instead of a handout. So what do you say, Miss Kendrick? You willing to take a chance on a ranch 15 miles from nowhere with a bunch of rough cowhands and a boss who cannot cook to save his life? 1,000 fears crowded Lila's mind. What if he was lying? What if this was some elaborate trick? What if he turned out to be cruel or expected more than housekeeping? But then she thought about sleeping in another alley, about the gnawing hunger, about the way people looked through her as if she was already a ghost. I will work hard, she said, her voice stronger now. I promise you that. I am a good cook, and I know how to clean and mend. I will earn my wages, Mr. Coleman. I believe you will, Wade said, and the warmth in his smile made something tight in her chest loosen slightly. We will head out first thing in the morning. I have got a room at the boarding house, and I will arrange one for you as well for tonight. Tomorrow, I will get you some proper work clothes and supplies, and then we will ride out to the ranch. That night, lying in an actual bed with clean sheets for the first time in weeks, Lila cried silent tears of relief and gratitude and lingering fear. She prayed that Wade Coleman was the good man he seemed to be, that this chance would not turn into another nightmare. She prayed that she would be able to do the work he needed, that she would not disappoint him or give him cause to regret his kindness. In the morning, Wade was waiting outside the boarding house with 2 horses and a patient smile. True to his word, he took her to the general store and outfitted her with 2 practical cotton dresses, an apron, sturdy boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to protect her from the sun. He also bought supplies for the ranch, loading everything onto a pack mule he had brought along. The ride north took them through rolling prairie land dotted with wildflowers and occasional stands of cottonwood trees. Wade kept his horse to a walk, mindful that Lila was not an experienced rider, and pointed out landmarks along the way. That creek there is good for fishing, he said, gesturing to a ribbon of water glinting in the sunlight. And those hills in the distance mark the northern boundary of my property. It is not a huge spread, but it is mine, bought and paid for with money I saved working trail drives for 10 years. How long have you had the ranch? Lila asked, grateful for the conversation that kept her mind off her nervousness. 3 years now, Wade replied. Started with nothing but determination and a few good horses I bred up from foundation stock. Built the house myself, with help from the men who work for me. It is not fancy, but it is solid. As they crested a rise, the ranch came into view and Lila caught her breath. It was beautiful in a stark, practical way. A sturdy wooden house with a wraparound porch, a large barn, several corrals, and the vast expanse of grassland stretching in every direction. She could see horses grazing in one of the pastures, their coats gleaming in the afternoon sun. Welcome to the Coleman Ranch, Wade said, and there was pride in his voice, the earned pride of a man who had built something with his own hands. 3 men emerged from the barn as they rode up, all of them weather-beaten and curious. Wade made the introductions quickly. This is Sam, he has been with me from the start. That is Pete, joined us last year. And the young one is Johnny, just hired him this spring. Boys, this is Miss Kendrick. She will be keeping house for us and cooking proper meals, so I expect you to treat her with respect. Sam, an older man with gray streaking his brown hair, touched his hat brim. Pleased to meet you, miss. Any woman willing to take on this bunch deserves a medal. Pete and Johnny mumbled their greetings, both looking somewhat shocked to see a woman at the ranch. Johnny, who could not have been more than 17, blushed bright red and hurried back to the barn. Wade helped Lila down from her horse, his hands steady on her waist, and she felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. He released her quickly, maintaining a proper distance, and gestured toward the house. "Let me show you around," he said. The interior of the house was exactly as he had described, clean but clearly lacking a woman's touch. The front room held a simple furniture arrangement, a fireplace and windows that let in good light. The kitchen was spacious with a large cookstove, a pump for water, and shelves that were only half stocked. There were 2 bedrooms, and Wade showed her to the smaller one, which held a narrow bed, a dresser, and a trunk. "This was my mother's room," he said quietly. "I hope you will be comfortable here. The main bedroom is mine, just across the hall. The hands sleep in the barn, and they have got their own washing-up area out there, so you need not worry about stumbling over them in the morning." Lila set her small bundle of new belongings on the bed, running her hand over the quilt that covered it. The fabric was worn but carefully mended, stitched with love by hands that were now still. "Your mother made this." "She did," Wade confirmed. "She was good at things like that, making a home feel warm even when times were hard." "I will take good care of it," Lila promised. "And I will take good care of your house, Mr. Coleman. You have given me a chance when no one else would, and I will not forget that." "Call me Wade," he said. "We do not stand much on formality out here." Over the following days, Lila threw herself into her work with a determination that came from deep gratitude and deeper fear of losing this precious security. She rose before dawn to start the cookstove, prepared hearty breakfasts of eggs, bacon, biscuits, and gravy that made the ranch hands groan with appreciation. She scrubbed floors, washed windows, beat rugs, and organized the pantry. She mended shirts and socks, patched torn pants, and sewed curtains for the windows from fabric she found in the trunk in her room. Wade watched her work with growing admiration. She never complained, never shirked a task, and her cooking was genuinely excellent. More than that, her presence changed the feel of the house, brought warmth and life to rooms that had felt hollow and empty. He found himself looking forward to meals, not just for the food but for the chance to talk with her, to learn more about this quiet, determined woman who had stumbled into his life. Lila, for her part, found herself relaxing incrementally as days turned into weeks. Wade was unfailingly kind, never raising his voice, never making demands beyond the work they had agreed upon. He respected her privacy, knocked before entering rooms, and treated her with a courtesy she had almost forgotten existed. The ranch hands followed his example, keeping their distance but offering friendly greetings and compliments on her cooking. One evening after supper, as Lila was washing dishes, Wade came into the kitchen with a book in his hand. "You read?" he asked. "I do," Lila said, surprised by the question. "My mother taught me. She was a teacher before she married my father." "I thought you might like to borrow this," Wade said, setting the book on the table. "It is a collection of poems. My mother loved it." Lila dried her hands and picked up the book reverently. It had been so long since she had held something to read, since she had that small pleasure. "Thank you," she said, and her voice was thick with emotion. That night, sitting in her room with the lamp burning low, Lila read poetry and felt something inside her begin to heal. The constant fear that had gripped her since her mother's death started to ease, replaced by a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place to belong. Summer deepened across the Kansas prairie, bringing long, hot days and brief, violent thunderstorms that swept across the land like vengeful spirits. Lila settled into the rhythm of ranch life, her body growing stronger from regular meals and hard work. The hollows in her cheeks filled out, color returned to her skin, and she began to look like the young woman she was rather than a ghost barely clinging to existence. Wade found himself increasingly aware of her presence in ways that had nothing to do with clean floors and good meals. He noticed the way sunlight caught in her hair when she hung laundry on the line, He appreciated the sound of her humming as she worked in the kitchen. He looked forward to the evenings when they would sit on the porch after the day's work was done, talking about everything and nothing while the stars emerged overhead. It was during one of these evening conversations that Wade told her about his father. "He was a mean drunk," Wade said, staring out at the darkening prairie. "Beat my mother more times than I can count. I was too young to stop him when I was a boy, but when I got old enough, I made it clear that if he laid another hand on her, I would kill him. He left after that, just disappeared one night. We heard later that he died in a saloon fight in Denver." "I am sorry," Lila said softly. "I am not," Wade replied honestly. "My mother and I did better on our own. She took in sewing and washing, and I worked whatever jobs I could find. When I was 16, I hired on with a cattle drive, and that is when I fell in love with the open range and the freedom of it. I sent money home whenever I could, and I promised her that someday I would build her a real home, a place where she would always be safe and cared for." "She must have been so proud of you," Lila said, understanding now why he had shown her such kindness. He knew what it was like to struggle, to be at the mercy of circumstances beyond your control. "I hope she was," Wade said. "She died before the house was finished, but she saw the land and she approved of it, said it had good bones, good energy. She always believed in things like that." Lila reached out without thinking and placed her hand over his where it rested on the porch railing. The contact sent a spark through both of them, and for a moment, neither moved. Then Wade turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers, and they sat in silence, connected in a way that felt both terrifying and right. The easy companionship they had built began to shift into something deeper, though both of them were cautious about acknowledging it. Wade had not courted a woman since before he bought the ranch, too focused on building his dream to think about sharing it with anyone. Lila had never been courted at all, too busy caring for her ailing mother, and then too desperate for survival to think about romance. But feelings grew despite their caution, nurtured by shared work and quiet conversations, by the way Wade always served Lila first at meals, and the way she mended his shirts with particular care. By the way he brought her wildflowers from the prairie, and the way she saved him the best pieces of pie. The ranch hands noticed, of course. Sam, with his years of experience reading people and situations, smiled to himself and said nothing. Pete and Johnny whispered about it when they thought no one could hear, pleased by the idea of their boss finding happiness. It was Sam who finally pushed Wade to speak his heart. They were working together to repair a fence line one hot August afternoon when Sam said casually, "You planning on letting that girl know how you feel? Or are you going to wait until some other fellow with eyes in his head comes along and sweeps her off her feet?" Wade hammered a nail with more force than necessary. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Sure you do not," Sam said dryly. "And I am the King of England. Boss, I have worked for you long enough to speak plain. You are sweet on her, and unless I am completely blind, she feels the same way. But she is not going to make the first move because she is afraid you will think she is overstepping or trying to trap you. And you are not making a move because you are worried she will think you hired her under false pretenses. Meanwhile, you are both tiptoeing around each other like nervous colts." Wade set down his hammer and wiped sweat from his forehead. "What if I ruin everything? She is finally safe and settled. What if I tell her how I feel and it makes things uncomfortable? She might feel obligated to leave, and God knows what would happen to her then." "Or," Sam countered, "you tell her how you feel, and she tells you she feels the same way, and you both stop wasting time you could be spending happy together. Life is short, Wade. You know that better than most." That evening, Wade asked Lila to walk with him after supper. The sun was setting. painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple that took her breath away. They walked past the barn toward the creek, the sound of frogs and crickets rising around them. "Lila," Wade began, then stopped, searching for words he had never learned to say. "These past months with you here, they have been the best I have had since my mother passed. The house feels like a home again, and that is not just because of the cooking and cleaning. It is because of you, your presence, your laughter. I find myself thinking about you all the time, looking for excuses to be near you." Lila's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "Wade, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything if you do not feel the same way," Wade said quickly. "I will understand, and nothing has to change. You will always have a place here, a job, security. I am not trying to leverage that or pressure you in any way. I just needed you to know that I have come to care for you deeply. More than care for you, if I am being honest. I think I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Wade feared he had made a terrible mistake. Then Lila smiled, a real smile that lit up her entire face, and his heart soared. "I am falling in love with you too," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I have been for weeks now, maybe since the very beginning. I thought it was just gratitude at first, relief at being safe and cared for, but it is more than that. You are kind and honorable, and everything I never knew enough to hope for. When I am with you, I feel like myself again, like the person I was before everything fell apart." Wade reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses roughening his palms. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," Lila whispered. And then his lips were on hers, soft and questioning, and she was kissing him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside. It was sweet and tentative at first, then deeper as years of loneliness and longing poured out from both of them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "I want to do this right," Wade said, resting his forehead against hers. "I want to court you properly, give you the respect you deserve, and then, if you will have me, I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife, my partner, not just my housekeeper. I want to build a life with you, have children with you, grow old with you." Tears were streaming down Lila's cheeks, but they were happy tears, tears of joy she had never thought to feel again. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it. I want that too, more than anything." They held each other as the stars came out, two people who had found each other in the unlikeliest of ways, who had taken a chance on kindness and discovered love. The courting period that followed was sweet, despite being somewhat unconventional given that they lived in the same house. Wade was scrupulous about propriety, never entering Lila's room uninvited, always maintaining proper distances in front of the ranch hands. But he also brought her gifts from town, small things like ribbons and candy, and once, a beautiful cameo brooch that had belonged to his mother. "She would have wanted you to have it," he said when Lila protested that it was too much. "She always told me that when I found the right woman, I would know because she would feel like home. You feel like home, Lila." They took walks together in the evenings, rode out to check on the horses, sat together on the porch swing that Wade hung from the rafters. They talked about everything, learning each other's histories, dreams, and fears. Lila told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about her father who had died when she was 10, about her mother's long illness and the helpless feeling of watching her fade away. Wade told her about working cattle drives through every kind of weather, about the dream that had sustained him through the hardest times, about his determination to build something lasting and good. In September, Wade rode into town and returned with a simple gold band and a nervous smile. He proposed formally that evening, going down on one knee in the parlor while Sam, Pete, and Johnny watched from the doorway with huge grins on their faces. Lila Kendrick, "Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Wade asked, holding out the ring. "Yes," Lila said, laughing and crying at the same time. "1,000 times yes." The wedding took place 3 weeks later in the small church in Leavenworth. It was a modest affair, attended by the ranch hands, a few people Wade knew from town, and the minister's wife who served as witness. Lila wore a new dress of pale blue cotton with lace at the collar, and Wade wore his best suit, his hair freshly cut, and his boots polished to a shine. As they spoke their vows, Lila thought about how far she had come from the desperate, hungry girl huddled in an alley. She thought about the kindness of the man standing before her, how he had seen her worth when everyone else had looked away. And she felt a profound gratitude, not just for the rescue, but for the love that had grown from it, love that was real and true and chosen. Wade slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her in front of God and everyone, and Lila knew that she was finally, truly home. The first months of marriage were a period of adjustment and discovery. Lila moved her belongings into Wade's room, and they learned to share space and decisions and the intimacy of sleeping beside another person. Wade was patient and gentle, always considering her needs and feelings, and Lila found that the marriage bed held joy and comfort rather than the fear she had sometimes felt when contemplating it. They fell into new rhythms together. Wade still rose early to work the ranch, but now he woke to find coffee already brewing and his wife humming in the kitchen. Lila still kept the house and cooked the meals, but now she did it as lady of the house rather than hired help, and the difference in how she felt about the work was profound. She was building her own home now, creating something that belonged to her as much as to Wade. Winter came early that year, sweeping down from the north with bitter winds and snow that piled in drifts against the barn. The ranch work became harder, more focused on survival than improvement. Wade and the hands spent long days breaking ice in water troughs, feeding hay to the stock, and making sure no animals were lost to the cold. Lila kept the house warm and welcoming, a refuge from the harsh weather. She cooked enormous meals to fuel the men through their hard work, baked bread and pies, knitted socks and mittens. In the evenings, she and Wade would sit by the fire, her hands busy with mending while he read aloud from books or the newspaper he brought back from town. It was during one of these peaceful evenings in December that Lila told him she was carrying their child. Wade stared at her for a long moment, the words seeming to take time to penetrate. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen, and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. "A baby," he said wonderingly, setting her down carefully as if she might break. "We are going to have a baby." "When?" "Late spring, I think," Lila said, her hand moving instinctively to her still flat stomach. "I am not far along yet, but I am certain." Wade knelt in front of her, placing his hands gently over hers. "I am going to be a father," he said, and there was awe in his voice and something that might have been fear. "What if I am no good at it? What if I turn out like my old man?" "You will not," Lila said firmly, touching his face. "You are nothing like him, Wade. You are kind and patient and good. You will be a wonderful father." "I hope so," Wade said. "God, I hope so. This baby will have everything, Lila. Love, security, a real home. Everything we did not have." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter and into spring. As Lila's belly grew round and prominent, Wade became increasingly protective, refusing to let her lift anything heavy or work too hard. She tolerated his hovering with good humor, understanding that it came from love and perhaps from the fear of losing another person he cared about. Sam, Pete, and Johnny were excited about the coming baby, already arguing about who would teach the child to ride and rope. They were careful around Lila now, speaking more softly, jumping to help with any task that might be too strenuous. In May, exactly 1 year after Wade had first seen Lila huddled in that alley in Leavenworth, their son was born. It was a long labor that left Lila exhausted and Wade nearly insane with worry, but when the doctor from town finally placed the squalling infant in Wade's arms, all the fear melted away into pure wonder. "He is perfect," Wade whispered, staring down at the tiny red face. "Absolutely perfect." They named him William, after Wade's grandfather, a man Wade remembered as kind and steady. Little William was healthy and strong, with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. He nursed hungrily and slept in a cradle Wade had spent months carving and sanding until it was smooth as silk. Lila had never known she could love something as fiercely as she loved her son. Every moment of her difficult past seemed worth it now, a necessary road that had led her to this place, this family, this overwhelming joy. She watched Wade with the baby and fell in love with him all over again, seeing the gentleness with which he handled their child, the soft words he murmured, the way he would pace the floor at night when William was fussy so Lila could rest. The ranch prospered as the years passed. Wade's reputation for breeding quality horses spread, and buyers came from as far as Missouri and Colorado to purchase his stock. He hired 2 more hands to help with the increased work, built a larger barn, and added rooms to the house. When William was 2, Lila became pregnant again, and this time she carried twins. Wade was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. The pregnancy was harder than the first, leaving Lila tired and uncomfortable, but she bore it with her characteristic determination. The twins, a boy and a girl, arrived in the early morning hours of a crisp October day. The boy came first, yelling his displeasure at being evicted from his comfortable home. They named him Thomas. His sister followed 10 minutes later, quieter but observing everything with alert dark eyes. They named her Sarah, after Wade's mother. With 3 small children, the house was full of noise and chaos and love. Lila sometimes felt overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood, the constant needs of 3 little people who depended on her for everything. But Wade was a full partner in parenting, changing diapers without complaint, walking crying babies in the middle of the night, and playing endless games with William while Lila tended to the twins. "This is what I always wanted," Wade told her one evening as they watched their children sleep. "Not just the ranch or the success, but this. A family, people to love and protect, a legacy that matters. We are building something good here," Lila agreed, leaning against him. "Something worth all the struggles it took to get here." When the twins were 3 and William was 5, Lila found herself pregnant one last time. This pregnancy was unplanned but welcomed, and it resulted in another daughter, born on a spring morning so beautiful it seemed like a benediction. They named her Grace, because that was what she represented, the unearned blessing that had characterized Lila's entire life since that day. Wade Coleman had offered her a meal with no strings attached. 4 children made for a busy household. Lila had help now, a young woman named Mary from town who came 3 times a week to assist with laundry and cleaning. But Lila still did most of the work herself, still took pride in the home she had created, in the meals she prepared, in the garden she had coaxed from the prairie soil. The children grew, healthy and loved, learning to ride and rope, to read and cipher. Wade taught them about horses and integrity, about hard work and keeping your word. Lila taught them kindness and empathy, about helping those in need and never judging someone by their circumstances. When William was old enough to understand, Lila told him the story of how she and Wade had met, how she had been homeless and hungry, and his father had shown her mercy. She wanted her children to know that goodness mattered, that one act of kindness could change a life, that they came from people who understood struggle and had chosen compassion. "Your father saved me," she told William as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky. "Not just by giving me food and a job, but by seeing me when everyone else looked away. By treating me like I mattered, like I had value. That is the most important gift you can give another person, and I want you to remember that." "I will, Mama," William promised, serious in the way of children who are beginning to understand the weight of the world. The years rolled on, bringing changes and challenges but also deep contentment. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Wade trained William to work beside him, teaching him everything about breeding and raising horses, about managing land and people. The boy was a natural, inheriting his father's patience and his mother's kind heart. The twins developed their own personalities. Thomas was bold and adventurous, always pushing boundaries and taking risks. Sarah was quieter, more thoughtful, but with a stubborn streak that came from both parents. Grace, the baby, was sunny-tempered and charming, able to wrap everyone around her little finger with a smile. Lila sometimes looked around her full, noisy, happy house and felt overwhelmed by how different her life was from what it might have been. If Wade had ridden past that day instead of stopping, if he had looked away like everyone else, where would she be now? Would she have survived those desperate weeks in Leavenworth? Would she have been forced into degrading work just to eat? Would she have given up entirely, let the hunger and despair consume her? But he had not ridden past. He had stopped and looked and cared. And from that single act of compassion had grown all of this: love, family, purpose, home. One evening when the children were in bed and the house was finally quiet, Lila and Wade sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. It was their favorite time, these peaceful moments at the end of long, full days. "You remember the first time we sat out here together?" Wade asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Of course," Lila said. "You had just told me about your father, and I held your hand for the first time. I was terrified and hopeful all at once. I was falling in love with you even then," Wade said. "I just did not know how to say it yet. You showed it in 100 different ways," Lila replied. "In your kindness and patience, in the respect you gave me, in the way you made me feel safe for the first time in so long." Wade was quiet for a moment, then said, "I need you to know something, Lila. Offering to help you that day was not just charity or even just kindness. From the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. It was like my soul knew yours, knew that you were important, that you would matter. I told myself I was just offering a job, but I think part of me knew even then that I was offering my whole life." Tears pricked Lila's eyes. After all these years, he could still surprise her, still make her feel cherished and chosen. "You gave me everything," she said. "When I had nothing, when I was nothing in the world's eyes, you saw me and valued me and loved me. You gave me back my life, Wade. You gave me a family and a home and a reason to believe in goodness again." "We gave each other everything," Wade corrected gently. "You brought life and warmth and purpose to my solitary existence. You filled my house with love and laughter. You gave me children and partnership and more happiness than I knew was possible. We saved each other, Lila. That is what I believe." They rocked slowly on the swing, holding each other as the night deepened around them. From inside the house came the sound of a child calling out in sleep, and Lila stirred to go check, but the crying stopped, one of the twins probably soothing the other. "They are good children," Wade observed. "You have done a fine job raising them." "We have done a fine job," Lila insisted. "You are as much their parent as I am, Wade. They adore you." "They adore you more," Wade said with a smile. But I am not complaining. Watching you with them, seeing the mother you have become, it is one of the greatest joys of my life." As the children grew older, the Coleman family became well known and well respected in the region. Wade served on the town council in Leavenworth, using his influence to help establish a school and support services for people down on their luck. He never forgot where he came from, and he never let his success make him callous to the struggles of others. Lila became involved in church work, organizing donations of food and clothing for families in need. She was particularly concerned with helping homeless women, remembering too well how it felt to be invisible, to be judged and dismissed. She worked with the minister's wife to establish a small shelter where women could stay while they got back on their feet, and she hired several such women to work on the ranch, giving them the same chance Wade had given her. William grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's compassionate nature. When he was 21, he married a sweet girl from town named Emma, and they built a house on the far corner of the ranch property. Wade deeded him a portion of the land, wanting his son to have the same opportunity he had enjoyed, to build something of his own. Thomas, restless and ambitious, left Kansas after finishing school to try his luck in California. It was hard for Lila to see him go, but she understood the need to chase dreams, to find your own path. He wrote regularly, sharing his adventures and slowly building a business in San Francisco. Sarah surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, opening a school in Leavenworth for children whose families could not afford the established institutions. She inherited her mother's determination to help those others overlooked and her father's steady work ethic. She never married, claiming she was too busy with her students to worry about a husband, but she seemed content with her choices. Grace, the youngest, was the social butterfly of the family. She loved parties and pretty dresses and had a string of suitors by the time she was 17. She married at 19, a young lawyer from a good family, and moved to Kansas City. But she visited often, bringing her own children to stay at the ranch for long summers where they could run wild and free as their mother had done. The ranch continued to thrive under Wade's management, then later under William's as Wade gradually turned over more responsibility. Wade's hair went gray, then white, and his movements became slower, but his mind remained sharp, and his love for Lila never diminished. They celebrated their 25th anniversary with a party that brought together 3 generations of family and friends. The house rang with laughter and music, and at the center of it all were Wade and Lila, still holding hands, still looking at each other with love. 25 years, Wade marveled as they danced together, moving slowly to a fiddle tune. Half my life I have spent with you, and they have been the best years. The best years so far, Lila corrected with a smile. We have many more ahead of us, God willing. And they did have more years, good ones full of grandchildren and quiet contentment, of watching the ranch continue to prosper under William's leadership, of traveling to visit Thomas in California and attending recitals for Sarah's students and spoiling Grace's children. On their 30th anniversary, Wade commissioned a portrait of the two of them to hang in the parlor. The artist captured them standing together on the porch of the ranch house, the prairie stretching out behind them, their hands intertwined. When it was finished and hung, Lila stood looking at it with tears in her eyes. "What do you see?" Wade asked, coming to stand beside her. "I see us," Lila said. "Not just as we are now, but as we have always been. 2 people who found each other when we both needed it most. 2 lives that became one life, stronger and better together than either would have been alone." "That is exactly right," Wade said, pulling her close. "You know, sometimes I think about that day in Leavenworth when I saw you outside the general store. I think about how I almost did not stop. I was tired and dusty and wanted a drink, and I nearly just went on to the saloon. But something made me look twice, made me care. Do you believe in fate, Lila? I believe in kindness, Lila said. And I believe in love. Whether fate brought us together or simple chance, we chose each other, Wade. Every day for 30 years, we have chosen each other. That is what matters. The years continued their steady march. Wade and Lila grew old together, their hair white, their faces lined with the marks of lives well lived. They slowed down but never stopped, still sitting on the porch swing in the evenings, still holding hands, still finding joy in each other's company. William and Emma gave them 8 grandchildren, a boisterous, loving bunch who brought energy and chaos to holiday gatherings. Thomas married late but well, a clever woman who helped him build his California business into something significant. He had 2 children, whom Wade and Lila met during a memorable trip west when they were both in their 60s. Sarah remained devoted to her teaching, considering her students her children, and they loved her fiercely in return. Grace had 4 children and was a doting mother who nevertheless made time to visit the ranch regularly, bringing her whole family for extended stays. On their 40th anniversary, the family threw another party, even larger than the first. All the children came home, bringing spouses and grandchildren. The house overflowed with people, 3 generations of Colemans and the extended family they had created. After the party, when everyone had finally gone to bed and the house was quiet, Wade and Lila took their usual places on the porch swing. They were both moving slower now, Wade using a cane and Lila occasionally needing help with stairs, but they were still together, still whole. 40 years, Wade said. Who would have thought that scared, hungry girl and the cowboy too stubborn to look away would build all this? I knew, Lila said softly. Maybe not at first, not when I was still afraid you would turn out to be something other than what you seemed. But after those first few weeks, when you had shown me nothing but kindness and respect, I knew we could build something good together. I was so nervous asking you to marry me, Wade confessed. I kept thinking, what if she says no? What if she only sees me as her employer, as an obligation? But you said yes, and you have been saying yes ever since to all of it. To me, to this life, to raising our children and loving our grandchildren and building this family. It was the easiest yes of my life, Lila said. Every day with you has been a gift, Wade. Even the hard days, the losses and struggles, we have faced them together. You have been my partner, my love, my home. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands as they had done for 40 years, watching the stars wheel overhead. The prairie stretched out around them, dark and vast and beautiful, the land they had worked and loved and built a life upon. I need you to promise me something, Wade said eventually. Anything, Lila replied. If I go first, and I likely will since men do not tend to live as long, I need you to promise that you will be all right. That you will let the children take care of you, that you will not grieve yourself into the grave. We have had a good run, Lila. Better than good, it has been extraordinary. But when my time comes, I need to know you will carry on and be happy. Tears streamed down Lila's cheeks. I do not want to think about that. I know, Wade said gently. But we are not young anymore, and it is a reality we have to face. I need your promise. I promise, Lila whispered. But you have to promise me the same thing. If I go first, you will not give up. You will keep living, keep enjoying the family we built. I promise, Wade said, though they both knew he was lying. Wade Coleman had never loved anyone the way he loved his wife, and the thought of living without her was almost unbearable. But as it happened, Lila need not worry. Wade lived to be 76 years old, still working the ranch in a supervisory capacity, still riding his horse around the property, still sitting on the porch swing with his wife every evening. He died peacefully in his sleep one autumn night, holding Lila's hand, his last words a whispered, "I love you." The funeral was attended by hundreds of people, testament to the life Wade had lived and the respect he had earned. His children spoke, his grandchildren cried, and Lila sat in the front pew, dry-eyed and silent, feeling as if part of her own soul had been ripped away. True to her promise, she did not grieve herself into the grave, though the temptation was strong. She leaned on her children, accepted their comfort and care, and slowly found a way to keep living even though the man who had been her whole world was gone. She lived another 8 years, surrounded by family, watching her grandchildren grow and her great-grandchildren arrive. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the kindness and strength and love that had defined him. She made sure they understood where they came from, what it meant to be a Coleman, the legacy of compassion and integrity that Wade had built. On what would have been their 48th anniversary, Lila had a massive stroke. Her children gathered around her bed, and in her final moments of consciousness, she smiled at them with pure love. "I am going to see your father now," she whispered. "We will be waiting for you, all of us, when your time comes. Live good lives, help people who need it, love each other. That is what matters." She died with her children holding her hands, and if you asked any of them, they would swear that her last word was Wade, spoken with joy and anticipation. They buried her next to her husband on a hill overlooking the ranch, with matching headstones that read simply their names and dates, and underneath, the inscription, "Two souls, one love, one life." The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations, and with it passed the story of how it had begun. The story of a homeless, hungry girl and a cowboy who could not look away. The story of how one act of kindness had rippled out to affect hundreds of lives, creating a family and a legacy that endured. In the town of Leavenworth, there was eventually a shelter named for Lila Coleman, established by her daughter Sarah and continued by her granddaughters. It provided food, housing, and help to women in need, and above the door was a plaque that read, "Because everyone deserves to be seen." And on the Coleman ranch, in the house that Wade built and Lila made a home, there hung that portrait of the two of them, hands clasped, facing the future together. Subsequent generations of Colemans would stand before it and hear the story, and they would understand that they came from love, real and true and lasting, the kind of love that changes the world one person at a time. The prairie wind still blew across the land, carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers. The horses still ran in the pastures, descendants of the stock Wade had bred with such care. The house still stood strong, sheltering generation after generation of the family that had begun with a chance meeting and a decision to be kind. And if sometimes, on quiet evenings when the stars came out, visitors to the ranch swore they could see two figures sitting on the porch swing, holding hands and watching the sunset, well, perhaps love like that never really dies. Perhaps it echoes through time, a reminder that mercy matters, that compassion has power, that one person seeing another's worth can change everything. The story of Wade and Lila Coleman became a legend in Kansas, told and retold, inspiring others to look twice, to care more, to extend hands to those who had fallen. It was a story about the best of what people could be when they chose kindness over indifference, love over fear, hope over despair. And at its heart, it was a simple story of two people who found each other in the unlikeliest of ways and built something beautiful together, something that lasted long after they were gone, something that proved that happy endings were possible even for a homeless, hungry girl and a cowboy passing through town. That more than anything was their legacy, greater than the land or the wealth, or even the children they had raised. It was the proof that love could transform lives, that second chances existed, that no one was ever truly lost as long as someone was willing to see them and care. The Coleman family continued to prosper through the generations, each one carrying forward the values Wade and Lila had instilled, each one remembering where they came from and what it meant. They helped their neighbors, gave generously to those in need, and never forgot that their entire family existed because one man had stopped when everyone else looked away. In time, the story took on an almost mythical quality, but at its core, it remained true. Wade Coleman had seen Lila Kendrick on the worst day of her life and offered her hope. She had accepted that hope and transformed it into love. Together, they had built a life that proved goodness prevailed, that compassion mattered, that two broken people could come together and create something whole. And that was the real happy ending, not just that they lived long and loved deeply, though they did both. The real ending was in what they created together. The ripples of kindness that spread out from that first meeting in Leavenworth, Kansas in the spring of 1873, and continued spreading for generations. That was the kind of love that deserved to be remembered, celebrated, and emulated. That was the kind of story that reminded people why mercy and compassion mattered, why seeing others and valuing them was important, why love was always worth the risk. Wade and Lila Coleman lived, loved, built a family and a legacy, and died knowing they had lived well and mattered deeply. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren carried them forward, keeping their memory alive through stories and actions and the values they instilled. And somewhere on a Kansas ranch, under the endless prairie sky, two souls rested together, their story complete, their love eternal, their impact immeasurable. They had started with nothing but each other and built everything that mattered. They had taken a chance on kindness and reaped a lifetime of love. They had written their own happy ending, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one act of compassion at a time. And that truly was forever.